to you all. My name is Andrew Chung, artistic producer of London Symphonia, and today I've got with me our guest soloist and leader, Elinor Frey. Hello, Elinor.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, everybody. Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Joining me. So this chat of ours is ahead of our concert, An Elegant Fire. Um, And I just want to take some time to understand a little bit about the music, a little bit about your process, and how you go about putting these programs together. So let's start with this concept of music of the Galant. So it's this period that we think of it between somewhere between Baroque and the classical era. How do you define what this is?
Yeah, so I mean, there's Galant music is really like a favorite of mine. I just tend to like it and enjoy it, and there's so many quality pieces and great composers that wrote in this kind of mid 18th century time. But it's you can't put it too much in a box because you could say it's this, and then actually there's plenty of things that are another style or another way, and it just has a huge range. But if we could sort of say general tendencies and how music was changing, let's say at the first half of the 18th century, um, is that I think composers were exploring music that was a little bit more clear between the melody and the bass. So you would have, it's not that it would be just two parts, but it would be just very obvious that there's a beautiful melody and a clear bass that has a kind of medium paced harmonic motion. So not like lots of harmony changes constantly, but not necessarily long, 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 big harmonic blocks. So there's lots going on, but it's a little bit more not simple, but sort of natural and pleasing and very elegant, um we get the beginnings of this kind of approach, some places quite early, like in Naples, for example, at the beginning of the 18th century. A lot of composers are writing in this style. Plenty of Vivaldi's music, some of Bach's music really fits to this idea of style. And earlier music, what we think of more Baroque, often has these more contrapuntal lines that are more interlocking, sort of complex, quick changing harmonies a lot. And that's really just a slight shift. And then what also is, I think, important to note about Galant music is that it's a very participatory style of music where the audience, which more and more these maybe bourgeois people who were playing piano or playing harp or singing in their own homes and also going to concerts, they might not have been professional musicians, but the listener, also churchgoers and people in the theaters, they're sort of knew about the music and could maybe even compose a little or play music in this style. And so when the composers were writing these kind of different schemes of typical harmonic sequences, they would be able to pick up on it and understand what it means and where it's going. And then when a composer would do something surprising, then they would, oh wow, so they could sort of follow along. It was like a language, a musical language that many listeners spoke or played. It was a very shared and common experience. So I think that is a hallmark of Galant music, the very participatory feeling.
And
I
so
think I'll start with that. Yeah.
was it partly a
Yeah.
reaction to just this complexity of the high Baroque, and it just got as far as you could take it? And J.S. Bach, his music's incredibly complex, dense, very satisfying. And then
Hmm.
is it like pressing a reset button? People are like, okay, like we got to try something different, a different focus.
I don't think that happened too. I mean, that has been said for sure. That could be one theory, but I see it as coexisting. Bach wrote Galant. Think of like a minuet, a lot of dance music that came from parties or from the court, from elegant events at the court. And he could write in this way very easily and very in a refined, beautiful way. So it depends on the type of music, what it's meant for. Galant music was found in the church. It maybe didn't have the title bourrée, but sometimes composers would slide in these dances and just call it allegro, um, even if it was meant to be played in church. So there, people used to think there was a strict difference between church music, which was more complex, more serious, and then theater or court music that was this more lighthearted, um, singing, flowing. But I think they actually coexisted, and it depended on what the composer wanted to write. And um, so I don't know if it was really in reaction, but just developed naturally.
Mhm.
I think a lot of churches needed music. So imagine that you're in Naples and there's hundreds of churches in one city, and they need a lot of music and people making music. There's no radios. And so they started this conservatories where orphan boys would be trained in music and then be able to sort of serve their sort of slave labor, serve all the needs of the churches. And they would, so to get the training, they had this very rigorous, incredible training of sort of these set pieces and set ideas. And it was very teachable. But that doesn't mean it's not complex or not refined or not difficult. It just became this very strong tradition. And then that music also that style and that approach to music sort of traveled from Naples all around Europe and went into courts and churches and became more and more popular over the 18th century. So I don't know. I don't like to have a clear answer to people's questions because I think music history and development is actually kind of complicated, and it's more fun to just keep the complexity.
Yeah. And the
Um,
rate of
yeah.
change is so kind of vast, right? I mean, it happens
Yeah.
across decades. It's not like
Yeah.
1750 happens and then the new thing, takes shape and it's shared across the internet. Like the rate of change is just much more glacial.
And
Yeah.
we now in 2024 are changing too. We're researching, reading, re-evaluating, oh, what was that? And actually, how did they learn? And we're starting to maybe see that it's not just Baroque and then classical, and then there's this mix in between. This Galant period was huge, and there's lots of people and lots of decades where that was happening. And it's not something the average concert goer has heard of as much as Baroque or classical. But I think over the next many decades, that'll be bigger and bigger. At least
Hmm.
I hope so, because it's my favorite.
Hmm.
So,
And that's one of the things that London Symphony loves to do. We love to kind of dig in
yeah.
and lean into that specificity. And I'm sure that in your dealings with Joe, and you guys have been back and forth about so many different topics
Mhm.
to do with this program, you probably get the sense that, oh yeah, we're really keen to learn this stuff and to, don the classical bows and to get a really sense of genuine sense for the style, and we're grateful you're joining us to lead the way. So one of the most striking aspects of this concert will be that there's no conductor. It's you leading from the cello. So I
Yeah.
think it doesn't lead to an uncohesive performance, however, right? It's actually a really good thing for our group to practice. It puts that chamber music aesthetic front and center, and we're all got listening as intently as we can.
Yeah.
So leading from the cello, to me, it doesn't seem that common. You see a lot of leading from the violin, but
Yeah.
so how did this develop for you? Like, were there people who you looked to, when you were earlier in your performing career? You thought, oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
that. I can imagine that. Tell me a bit about that.
I have to say that it is really not common enough, and it's something that I want to encourage more of this to happen. So I've got to walk the walk and be willing to do it and be on stage and help audiences get used to this, and presenters to say, yeah, yeah, we'll have the cello soloist or conductor from the cellist from the cello. And I just hope it grows and develops. And there's not so many examples of people doing this, but I mean, there are a couple of videos, but there is one wonderful Baroque player, Jaap ter Linden, who did this quite a lot in the last couple decades. So I had a lesson with him online, and I've talked to, violinists about how they lead. And I think cello's just a big violin. How different could it be? Um, so I think that, and I had some lessons with regular conductors about, shaping. And it's also when I've led from the cello before, um, I think that it just is a different focus for the orchestra. They're looking more at me, they're looking at my bow. Um, they're listening to there maybe it's a little bit more listening to the rhythm rather than watching the beat in front of them. So it's
Mhm,
a slightly different physical oral experience. But I think it's just an adjustment and then it becomes totally possible. Sort of a different focus of energy and visually looking in a different place. And um, I think that if everybody prepares really well and is concentrating, there's there's no reason it should have any big problems. The music um is totally amazing, and I think it'll carry itself.
mhm.
And you know, we'll see. Of course, in the rehearsal, there might be one spot that's trickier than another, and we'll have to say, there we need the hand, or there Joe is gonna, you know, give an extra cue. So I have also he's like my partner in this to for
Yes.
cueing, because I can't always, especially, you know, if I'm playing a cello concerto, I can't always necessarily take my bow off the string.
Mhm,
So it'll be a shared thing. And we'll make it up as we go in a good sense,
mhm.
creative experience.
In a way, it's a little bit more of direct line of communication to the players. So rather than kind of funneling your knowledge about the style to a conductor who then tries to impart that to the orchestra,
Yeah.
we've got to listen, we've got to watch, and you'll have to be very demonstrative on the instrument. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to following from the cello. I mean, it's not that
I
uncommon in, like, if you think about a string quartet, right? There are moments when the cellist
yeah.
has to lead. Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to say something about, you know, here we are in 2024, and I think it's great when an orchestra like London Sinfonia says, we want to be part of something that's changing. So the cello is changing, symphonies are changing, our repertoire is changing, our approach to the music is changing, our world is changing. And I think it's much more exciting and realistic to say, to acknowledge that and be participate in it than to try to pretend that it's not changing and make things stay the same. So but we have to be willing to kind of dip our toes into something new and strange and maybe a little bit harder at first, like following the cellist rather than following the harpsichordist or whatever, and saying we want to be part of this exploration, and that we don't quite know where it'll all end up, but we're going to try. And I think it's also true with the repertoire. Like, I'm pretty sure that the group hasn't played this Symphonia by CPE Bach ever, and it's amazing piece that is mind-blowingly exciting, and maybe it'll become a regular thing for the Symphonia. I don't know, or maybe it's the first and last time, but at least the group is willing to try it out and to say we don't have to stay with what we know we've already done well. So I like that. I like that kind of. I
Mhm.
think it's fun for the audience too to participate in the change that's happening anyway. So we might as well get on board.
I
Yeah,
love that. I
yeah,
like that perspective. We have Joseph Haydn on the program, but we're not
yeah.
doing his two cello
Well,
concerti, right? And we
nope.
love that music, but we've
Yeah,
got other stuff to do. And so
yeah,
let's dig into some of the music that's being performed. So Boccherini, I gather Luigi Boccherini, music was one of your favorites.
yeah.
As I understand it, he composed 11 cello concertis. Is this right?
They found a 12th not that long ago. So actually there's 12.
Stop the
Yeah.
presses. Okay, there's 12. There's 12. And
Yes.
so this one that you've decided to perform with us, it's in D major. How do you make a choice? Like, is this one a piece that you've has been in your repertoire for many years or more recent?
Nope. It's going to be my first time playing it. Yeah. And I mean, maybe I'm insane. But I you know, I played the B flat concerto quite a few times, and I'm doing it again in October with an orchestra in Texas. And I mean, I've always really liked this piece, and I just thought like it kind of fit. I felt it fit really well, and um I just want to I want to try new things. I want to expand my experience. One thing that stuck out for this piece is that the second movement has a cadenza that Boccherini wrote himself, and it's the
Mhm.
only example we have of any cadenza by Boccherini. And so I think that kind of piqued my interest, like to play his cadenza. And then the other two movements, the first and the third movement, have cadenzas, but I wrote them, so I have to write them.
Ah.
And I don't know, I love a big project. So I'm, not quite done with the third movement cadenza, but I'm working on it, and I think it's really fun. My cadenza, his cadenza, mine again, and
And
then
for those who don't
yeah,
know, Luigi
yeah,
Boccherini was a cello virtuoso,
yes,
right?
yes,
So I
yeah.
mean, he
He
played the
wrote,
thing. He wasn't a keyboard player composing a cello concerto. He was a cellist composing a cello
yes.
concerto. And so that is so neat to have a cadenza. I'm sure you've just learned so much about his
Hmm.
playing, his style, sense of
Yeah.
style, just by digging into that music. Very
Yeah,
cool.
and the music itself is quite demanding. It goes quite high, but it's all makes sense under your hand. Like he's clearly a cellist. He knows how to put you in position and then move from a position. And there's a real certain logic to him. So it's sort of a pleasure physically to play, even
Mhm.
though it's hard. And I really, really like Boccherini. I think he's one of my top five, which
Mhm.
really means a lot. And I've even done whole tours. Like I think the last time I played in London was when I did this chamber music tour with his flute quintets. And we played all across Canada with a flutist from Europe that I invited, and played Boccherini flute quintets and some quartets and things. And so this is not the first time that I've played Boccherini in London, um, mostly because I'm so crazy about Boccherini. So yeah, I mean, anyway, so maybe audiences will have heard Boccherini in London I think it was 3 years ago, thanks to that. And yeah.
And we're also doing another piece by Boccherini. It's subtitled La Casa del Diavolo, so the House of the Devil.
Yes, yes. Um, what can I say? It's like a whipped frenzy of craziness. Just like it really is like burning down the house.
Mhm.
Um, it's creepy. It's very Halloween-esque. Creepy, scary, big bursts, outbursts of intensity. There's the violins, the second violins, I fear for their arm because it's so much that it's just nonstop for like minutes of grind.
I'm leading the second violin, so
You I didn't realize.
it's a
Okay,
thing.
well, get your ice bath ready. Um, yeah, I mean the first violins have a lot too, but they sort of get little breaks with dun da 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 da, and you have to
Mhm.
and it's like a wild frenzy, and it's so fun. And the whole program, I'm crazy about it, but I just imagined the audience in London just going woo at the end and just having fun,
Yeah.
and that would just be a nice way to end the program.
Yeah, this piece is a total hoot.
Yeah.
So that programmatic aspect was that, I mean, there was programmatic ideas within Baroque
Mhm.
music. Was it a little bit heightened or elevated as part of the Galant style, or it just is?
I think program music wasn't that common. There are a couple of things like in more Baroque times, like Rebel did Les Éléments, like the elements, and there's fiery stuff then. And there's actually another House of the Devil by Gluck, around the same time period as Boccherini. It's interesting to compare how their versions, because they have a lot of similarities.
Mhm.
And it's sort of the story kind of comes, I'm forgetting the name, but there's an opera that has this it's kind of a story from an opera. And this is taken from that. And I should read up on that before I arrive, and I'll give you a better answer. Or maybe it's even in my liner notes. Sometimes I write program notes and then I erase it from my brain. So um I I can't remember the name of the opera, but it's a very programmatic. And then later, especially in the 19th century, programmatic music, you think of Berlioz,
Mhm.
and there's a lot more of kind of symphonic music telling this story and not being as abstract.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not necessarily common to galant music, I don't think.
Okay, interesting.
Galant music, a lot of galant music imitates instruments, other instrument. You'll get, you know, galant music is not so symphonic, usually. It's more chamber, smaller ensembles, chamber symphony, and then you get like a cello imitating a harp, or there's little things like that, but less sort of telling a specific story.
Hmm.
But
So,
you tell me, maybe you know more.
oh, oh
Yeah.
no, no, definitely you're the knowledge book here. That's for sure. So we're doing two pieces by CPE Bach. Um,
Mhm.
one of his concerti.
Yes.
Very exciting. Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, so he has three cello concertos, and they were all written in a short time period around 1750, 50 and 51, 52, and when he was still living in Berlin. And what would happen is he had the ensemble of Frederick the Great, which they would play in Berlin, and also Sanssouci Palace. And that was one thing. But then outside of that main ensemble, there were a lot of like weekend salons
Mhm.
where musicians and these knowledgeable people that I was discussing at the beginning, who really knew about music, would attend and maybe play. And there'd be a big variety, and people would discuss and maybe have refreshments. So it's thought that these cello concertos were written for these salons. And there were a couple very, very virtuosic and impressive cellists around Berlin at that time. Um, and this A major concerto is sort of like the third one, and it was originally composed for cello, but there are versions for flute and harpsichord, so it gets played kind of a lot. And the music is absolutely stunning. The second movement, which is called Largo con sordino mesto. So it's sort of means widely, but with mutes. And
Mhm.
mesto is sad. And I think it's one of the most stunningly beautiful slow movements of all the cello literature.
Mm.
I chose it for this piece because I was just thinking the audience would like it, like
Oh,
the Casa del Diablo. This will go off well. And um I really, really like this piece. It's a very good cello concerto. All three are good pieces.
mhm.
And again, it's slightly lesser known than what you might expect sort of an 18th century cellist specialist to play. You'd think I'd be offering a Haydn or a Vivaldi concerto, or maybe I don't know, Schumann is a little later or something.
Mhm.
So even though they're well-known pieces, they're just less played. And I think it's the same level of quality and interest. And I want to just help that repertoire grow. Because I think there are like literally dozens and dozens of people wanting to play a Haydn concerto. So I'd rather just help it grow than do the thing that many other people want to do.
I'm totally into that. I think that's
Yeah.
great, great, great choices. And then the other composer on this program is Franz Joseph Haydn, and we're
Yeah.
doing his Sixth Symphony, so a little early for him.
Yes.
Just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I believe it was composed around 1766, so
Mhm.
it's quite early. And there are a couple reasons why I chose it. First of all, Haydn is an amazing composer, and since I wasn't playing the cello concerto, I wanted to give the audience a name that they know a little better. Maybe they too can enter into his world quicker
Mhm.
rather than CPE Bach, which might be a little bit more unfamiliar and a newer feeling. And I think it's also a piece that Symphonia, that London Sinfonia has played before. And so it's like interesting for me to bring something new as well as something more familiar.
Mhm.
But the main reason I chose it is because it's a really good piece, but also because it features the orchestra. It's a bit of a concerto grosso, or
Mhm.
sinfonia concertante, in the sense of the flute has a big solo, the bassoon has a big solo, the oboes have melodies, the horns are very active. There's tons of first violin things, and there's a lot of solo cello. So it's kind of convenient for a guest a cellist to come and play with this cello part too. So that's a kind of special textures that you don't get with every Haydn symphony in this piece. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Eleanor. I think
Sure.
we've run out of time. We could go on for hours about this
Yeah.
stuff, and you're such a fountain of knowledge and inspiration. I'm really looking forward to our concert together. This is
Me too.
An Elegant Fire on May the 4th, live from Metropolitan United in
Bring
London.
your friends.
Yes, absolutely. Bring your friends. This is going to be a wonderful, wonderful experience to work with you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.